Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can submit that anonymously at asksean.org. So I'm coming back from one of my horseback riding lessons, and I've been thinking lately about the interrelationship, the intersection between risk and play, and risk and thriving, and kind of our struggles as humans, our tendency to want to minimize risk, and the ways that has pros and cons, right? Like minimizing risk isn't all bad. Like there's a place for that. Keeps us alive, and seeking to be mindful of risk. And yet, if minimizing risk dominates our life, if that becomes the organizing principle for how we live, for how we do relationships, for how we parent, for how we do our vocation, for how we play, inevitably our world shrinks smaller and smaller and smaller. As I've been thinking about just even how there is an element of risk necessary, I think, for a certain kind of, for like an experience of competence, for an experience of, I don't know, like vitalizing energy. So in my horseback riding lesson today, my trainer has gotten a new horse. And this is a very experienced horse and is well trained and whatnot, but is new to this farm and is new to being a lesson horse in this kind of way. And so I was really paying attention to the ways in which the horse was a bit antsy this morning. And then it was compounded by my trainer was putting a number of the horses out in the field. And so there's like that element as well, that the horse I was going to be riding is like, where's everybody going? Because horses are herd animals. And so they're very attuned to, like to be left alone, for a herd animal is it feels life threatening, right? Because it's in the herd that they have the best chance of survival. And so as I was getting the horse prepared, putting the, gear, brushing him and cleaning his hooves and putting the gear on him and whatnot, I was also working with him, taking my time, trying to help him get grounded and whatnot. And, kind of work through some of that energy. But even once we got out there and I got on him, so got him under saddle, there was definitely some elevated kind of anxious energy for kind of the first, I don't know, 15 minutes of the lesson. And so, and then of course that brings my energy up, like, I don't know this horse. This is my first time riding him. Like, is he going to bolt? Is he going to, freak out and do, the horses have all these ways that they like startle in interesting directions that are a challenge to ride well and to not get thrown off or fall off. So it's this mutual exercise of like, I'm trying to keep myself grounded, work with my own anxiety. I'm trying to work with the horse and like trying to make sense of like, what's anxiousness, what's just he's excited. So I'm getting to know him and whatnot. And so with all of this, right, there's some risk, there's some challenge. And I would not have been ready for that challenge several years ago, right? In terms of like my horse experience journey, that would have been too big of a bite. Like that would have just been like, nope, I'm like freaked out and I'm not able to assert myself and I don't have enough, like it would have been too far beyond me. But it was a great challenge for today. Like I've done enough work with horses on the ground and horses under saddle, and I've ridden through enough startled horse experiences that even though it felt a little risky, a little anxiety producing, my trainer's there and I trust her, and so I know she's not gonna, if something's truly sketchy, like she's gonna intervene and be like, yeah, let's get off, let's pivot here. And so it was this great lesson of like, we didn't do anything elaborate, like technique wise, but it was just doing basic fundamentals and working with this horse and working with his energy, getting him more calm, working with the ways in which he's quick to go forward and trying to make sense of, is some anxiety in that? How much of that's just he likes to go forward, like he likes to move. And so I come out of this lesson with like a little more competency, like a feeling of like, oh, I did a thing. Like, and that if my goal, if the way I was doing life was oriented around like, okay, anything risky, anything remotely, any chance of being hurt, like nope, got to cut it off, not going to do it. Like I would have missed out on that opportunity, right? I would have missed out on that experience of working a little bit, a little bit edgy territory, a little bit risky, a little bit scary, and getting to build competence. And so this is a huge thing for us as humans, right? Like and I think it's a part of our learning development, not just as children, but as adults. I think it's an important part of play, or at least some of our play needs to involve this, right? Like, not that all play has to involve risk, but yeah, I think that I don't know, it's just, risk is not our enemy. It, do we need to be wise? Yes. Like, absolutely, right? Like it's not, we're not trying to flirt with death here. But neither are we seeking a pain-free life. Like, I think that's the thing. We've got to build emotional muscles of being less afraid of pain. It's still scary. Pain still hurts, right? Like if I had fallen off, it would have hurt. I would have been sore. But I've also practiced, I've taken trainings on like how to fall off a horse and like how to do it as safely as I can. Like, I take care of my body. I try to be in good shape. Like, so like there would be a cost, there would be pain, but I'd probably be okay. There could be a freak accident where like I fall off and I get paralyzed, and that would be freaking horrible. That would, utterly change my life forever. Right. So it's like, I've got to weigh these risks, right? And I don't do all things, right? There are lots of things in life that I do say no to, because it's just like, that feels too big a bite. That feels too outside of, like the risk reward ratio doesn't feel right to me. But I'm really mindful with myself. I've learned that I thrive best when I'm stretching myself, when I'm working a bit at my edges, and pushing myself a little bit and letting things be a little bit risky, a little bit scary, and just keeping, I don't know, I think there's like a gravitational pull. I think for all of us, or certainly I've experienced this with myself, but I think this is a human thing, that if we do nothing, if we're just passive, that like our fearfulness and our pain avoidance will just naturally sort of contract our life smaller and smaller, and we just get, and we'll start to just, we're barely living, right? We're barely peeking out at the world. And so I feel like living well requires an intentional effort to kind of keep expanding those edges, not just letting it, perpetually contract, but, like I don't need to become like a professional mountain climber or something, who free climbs Mount Everest or, some crazy thing like that. I mean, that would be amazing. I don't think that's my particular path, and whatnot. But I do want to keep working at my edges. I want to make sure that my life is not even staying static. I want to make sure that it's always expanding, little by little by little. Not out of ego, not out of like achieving anything or performance or earning love, but like we're meant to bloom, right? I mean, you think about a tree, right? A tree is meant to grow up and expand and put its branches out into the world. And we humans are like that. We're meant to grow and expand into the world. And so I think pushing into, in strategic ways and intentional ways, pushing into places of risk, in our play and in our relationships and in our vocation and, just in all areas of life. I mean, I think about the video I did recently where I talk about, are you half asking in your relationships? Like, are you avoiding risk by not really putting yourself out there and saying, hey, this is what I would like, this is what I want, this is what I long for? Or are you stretching yourself by being like, okay, no, I'm actually going to say the thing, right? Or like I mentioned in another video recently, like where I had some really candid conversation with somebody who I have a long history with, and it was risky and it was a bit scary, but I also was ready to do it because I'd faced enough of the pain and enough of the difficult stuff and whatnot that I was like, I was ready to say the things I needed to say, and I could say them in a good way, and it wasn't biting and it wasn't attacking and it wasn't mean, and but I didn't hold back. I didn't, just do the safe thing of like, well, I don't really need to talk about that. Like, no, something in me needs to say these things. I need to know that this person has heard me on these things, and regardless of what comes of that, like I just need to know that I said it, and that I spoke to those topics, and so I did, and it feels freaking great, even regardless of what comes of it. That's been really interesting. Like regardless of what comes of that, that's been so much less important psychologically for me than the fact that like I did the scary thing and I feel good about it. I feel like how I handled myself was good, and I felt like I was gotten as well as I could be, and that feels good. And um, so yeah. So anyways, that's the invitation for you today. Pay attention to where are you living your life out of this, like, I've got to avoid risk at all costs, right? Sort of this unexamined, risk avoidance, at all costs. Pay attention to places where that's dominating you, and really explore, like, how could you take a little bit of a risk? What would be a bite-sized step of doing something a little different, of putting yourself out there a little bit more, of trying something, a little bit differently, going to that, whatever, yoga class, painting class, horseback riding, whatever your thing might be, that somewhere it's been like, I kind of would like to check that out, or I would like to try this board game, or I would like to share this thing with this friend or this family member or this partner, or whatever the thing is. Like, pay attention to where there's there, because it's inside you, right? If you start to listen and turn towards it, you'll discover that like parts of you are talking to you. They are saying like, hey, like, we'd like to do this, but you keep shutting it down because it seems too scary. And just see like, okay, how can I take a step towards that, right? Like, you don't need to go, be like, okay, well, I'm interested in horseback riding, so I'm gonna go immediately start jumping stuff. Like, no, you just start with like, can I go up and touch a horse? Maybe can I, take a lesson that's like really gentle, really slow if I've never worked with horses before. Like I've had a lifelong fear of horses, and so I mean, I've mentioned this in other videos, but like, so I had to really like ease my way into, to where now, like, I work with horses multiple days a week. And it still gets scary at times, right? Like today, it was like, woo, wow, okay, I don't know what's about to happen here, but like, but again, that's part of the adventure, right? Like this sort of like risk within, like, kind of a manageable range. Like it vitalizes us, and we get that sense of, I did a hard thing and I survived it, I made it through, and I'm learning a little bit. So yeah, I invite you to watch and listen for places in your life where you could expand a little bit more. Well, until next time, peace be with you.